desktop ability to go live. That's been added to Substack apparently today, effective, toggled on, I guess. And I can hang up on you guys. I see an end button here. So we are, doing this thing to try to sort of light things up for people inside. I like to talk in harrowings about scraping the surface of things, like tilling up the soil when you harrow a field. And I like to talk about a lot of different subjects. We had a couple of guests on earlier today on the podcast version of Harrowings, and they included Rachel Kaisi Miller of Reddit, who's a product manager there. And we also had Monica Mooring, who is a coach for women 40 plus. She does a lot of heavy lifting kind of work with her clients in Indianapolis. So both ladies I met in the course of my travels, one way or the other. Rachel fairly recently at a knowledge management conference here in DC, where I was attending on the behalf of myself and my company for enterprise artificial intelligence. That was what I was trying to study. And I ended up in her enterprise search talk and realized she was talking a lot about how we can put our good where we can do the most, particularly that she was giving a certain percentage of her income to volunteerism, in addition to, supporting things where she knew it would do a lot. And she was using GiveWell to figure that out. Charity Navigator was another thing I think she had mentioned. And in passing, she mentioned Seva.org, I think, in that talk, and as an example of an organization that was doing significant work to transform the lives of people who are needlessly blind by giving them an operation which could restore their sight. And can you imagine being in a third world country, or any country for that matter, and being rendered blind by something that could be cured, but not having the money to do it? Well, that's what some people in the 1970s realized was a significant problem. And in 1979, they put together SEVA, and now it has saved the sights of like 5 million people out there, given eyesight to the blind, literally. So Harrowings is about trying to amplify those signals through the noise of cyberspace, trying to get these words out to people so that they can hear it. And I need your support to keep doing it. So that's another thing. I see we have 3 people have joined us so far. And, 3 people can significantly move the needle by simply sharing what they're hearing and amplifying it out through the network effects. I was talking to somebody later in the day. She called me up from Manhattan, and we hadn't talked in a while. I haven't talked person to person since 2019, I think. We may have exchanged some emails here and there. I've definitely given her some contributions to support her work, and she's a film director. She made a couple of different documentaries so far that are out there. She's working on a docu-series based on the work of Terry Real, who is a counselor for people's relationships. And we're really talking about how things are, matter of us relating to each other. And pardon my cough. I think I'll drink a little water. And luckily, I have clean water to drink. One of the major things that's happening out in Nigeria, for instance, is Impact is an organization digging wells there to provide clean drinking water. And then we have, a world in which water is going to be increasingly important in many ways, and we need to take action to be good ancestors. That's another big part of what Harrowings is all about. So I've got 4 people looking on besides me. I can see that much. I can only see 3 names, T.S. Morgan, Thomas Potgieter, Linda Blatnick. I don't remember seeing any of you all before, but welcome. I really appreciate you being here. If you're listening to me, write a message. Let me know who are you, where are you, and how are you? Those are the 3 things I like to ask anybody who looks on when I'm out there filming the passing show, which is another big part of what Harrowings does. I like to go out and do raw journalism, who, what, when, and where, and ask you all, who are you, where are you, how are you? And then on top of that, I want to know more about you, right? And more about what lights you up inside and what you'd like to see more of on Harrowings, because I'm here to serve. as well as to just talk to people. This is interesting to be able to do it on the laptop at last. It wasn't a functionality available. I was having to do it on the iPhone before. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Doing it over the iPhone was just fine. And one conversation at a time, I think we can help each other understand better how we might be able to help each other get a little further down the road towards a world that is peaceful, productive, that it really realizes that Star Trek universe, where people are actually working to their greatest potential, but they aren't hung up on money. They aren't hung up on possessions. I'm kind of hung up on some of my possessions. I collect a lot of art and literature and music. And the reason being that I think it moves the needle for the arts and the people who produce literature and all of that to acquire these things and then distribute them. I've done that more than once. I've jettisoned my worldly possessions in the year 2000 and moved to Denmark. So this is something that I like doing. I've tried to do what I can to be the change I want to see in the world. And it's hard at times to keep that up. We can support each other. I think Substack's a wonderful platform in that it's a noded network where everybody pretty much is on an equal footing. Different people have more or less in the terms of subscribers, and paid subscriptions are really important for moving the platform forward, I think. And so they don't go to advertising, because right now it's kind of free of ads, which is lovely. And, you might see somebody talking about something that they want to sell you, but it's your choice. And hopefully I'm delivering something of value in the work I'm doing. I'm trying to write, trying to explore different fields. Of course, supporting my foundation, the Harold B. Gill Foundation, which was founded for my father's legacy. He was a research historian, and there's a lot out there behind my paywall that he had produced that I'm preserving out there and making available. In addition to my grandfather, who's also Harold B. Gill Sr., my father, Harold B. Gill Jr., and I'm the third. So the three of us who've been on the planet, 1907 is when my grandfather was born, on January 16th. My father followed him, actually, on my grandfather's 26th birthday, 1933, January 16th. I missed that date by a few. I was born February 4th of 1963 when my father was 30, and my mother at the time was 23. She was about to turn 24. She's now 86. My father passed at the age of 91. I was very fortunate to have them in my lives. I'm very fortunate that they were both dedicated to preserving my hometown. Part of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation staff from 1961. My father got his job there before I was born, through till his retirement from being the consulting editor of the Colonial Williamsburg Journal, sort of a part-time gig he had after taking an early retirement out from his main job as a historian. My mother, registrar at the Department of Collections from 1972 to 2004. She moved that program of museum management to manage the collections from card catalogs to keep track of all the antiques throughout the town to finally she got to retire with the e-museum system having been successfully fielded. And you can see that at emuseum.history.org. I'll just write that in the messages because I think it's really a cool legacy to preserve, and it provides access to lots of information about the collection at Colonial Williamsburg still. She's in cognitive decline in a senior living facility now after my father died. 3 months to the day after he died, actually, she fell on the stairs and broke her pelvis in 2 places. And that was really tragic. These things happen. And overall, I think that, it's the best of possible solution for us right now. My sister's down there as the Chief Development Officer of Jamestown Yorktown Foundation. I'll be going back and doing a little fifing with the Fife and Drum alumni soon, but I don't get down to Williamsburg as often as I'd like. But I'll take mom out to lunch. She can manage that, I think, and, then I'll just fall in with my fellow fifers and drummers. I was 11 years old when I took up the fife and did that until I was 18. I graduated as a sergeant in the Corps. We were on a military basis, and I taught the younger kids to play and march, and they, carried on, teaching the next generation, and the next, and it's still going. It's one of the most amazing organizations in the fact that the foundation will take the kids, the parents drop them off, and the foundation does everything for them. They don't have to pay a cent, and they get paid for performing. So that works out pretty well. It worked out well for me anyway. It gave me a discipline, a kind of structure for my life, the idea that we had simple rules for complex performance with high quality. And I hope that I'm getting some high quality here. I think it's just about as raw as it can be. I will ramble on a little bit about that and tell you about some of my inspiration points for doing this work. One of them is Patti Smith. If you're aware of Patti Smith, it's because she does this raw ramble with us sometimes, and she'll pick up a book and say, why she's reading it. In this case, I'm got Killing Time by Paul Feyerabend. It's his autobiography. He was a great philosopher, by the way. And if you get a chance to see Killing Time, it's not a movie, but it's a book, and pick it up and read it because it's a lot of fun. He was a philosopher out at Berkeley, and he was German, and he had been shot during the war when he was a soldier, actually, in the German army. And he was directing traffic in Berlin and got hit by Russian bullets and noticed that when it hit his hand, it had ruined a pair of gloves he was wearing that had come off a dead soldier. And he was hoping to keep those gloves, and he was very disappointed that they had been ruined. And then he realized I'd been shot and got shot again. And he has war wounds for most of his career. But he fell in with Bertolt Brecht, worked with Brecht for a while. And then he managed to come over to Berkeley, and he was there during the 60s when all those riots were happening and such. I remember reading letters he was writing back to another German philosopher named Hans Alpert, who gave us the Munchausen trilemma. I don't know if you know the Munchausen trilemma. I'm not going to burden you with it right now. I couldn't probably explain it quite as well as I'd like to, just off the cuff. These are things that have really enriched my life and have helped me to become who I am these days. I like that Paul Feyerabend wrote his autobiography's title as Zeitverschwendung. They translated it Killing Time, but Zeitverschwendung really means wasting time. I don't know, man. I get to think sometimes that this is all we do, is we waste time. And time maybe an illusion, but it keeps clicking by. And this is a temp job we're on. We're here for a moment. We get an opportunity to play our way through creation, and we get an opportunity to lighten each other's burdens, and try to help each other out. So that's a big part of what I'm going to be talking to my friend Michelle Ezrick about later. She called me up from Manhattan today, and I was just really kind of awestruck because, well, Michelle's like a star to me. And I did talk about that a little bit, that she's a documentary filmmaker. I already touched upon that. And hopefully when we have her on, we'll talk about asking for help and how she became who she is had a lot to do with asking for help. I won't spoil that for you. I probably already shared, and it is findable out there on the web, her story. She did a thing on Spin Impact about 2 years ago, in which she talks a lot about it. And it's just a beautiful story. One of the things she's managed to achieve is to help get trauma-informed care into legislation for people going into treatment facilities, that they get trauma-informed care. Why? Well, because she had the opportunity to help Daryl Hammond of Saturday Night Live fame do his memoirs, or one-man play he was working on, I think, too. He wrote a memoir called God, If You're Not Up There, I'm Fucked. I like the title. I think that was maybe euphemistically written, and F star ing or something. But The point being that Daryl had suffered a lot of trauma as a child at the hands of his own mother, and the film touches upon that she made. It's called Cracked Up Movie. The Cracked Up, actually, but the website for it, I'll type into the chat as well. Cracked Up Movie. Oops, that's correct. That's a different movie. I probably don't even want to see that one. Crackedupmovie.com. And there's lots of resources on that page. In fact, you can go to Michelle's talks. You can go to other things. She had conversations, a continuing conversation going on where she'd have different guests and many famous people there talking about trauma-informed care and the importance of being able to own that, because most of us do have deep levels of trauma in our lives, and it may not be addressed, and it comes out sideways a lot of the time. I'm sure it comes out sideways with me. I'm trying to heal it to the best of my ability. I know that I've gone into relationships, and that's one thing that she'll be talking about as well in her docu-series with Terry Real. And it can do a lot of harm if we're not healed because we don't know how to love. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about that. Thich Nhat Hanh is the guru of wavy gravy as well, the teacher. And Wavy Gravy likes to put it this way when he does this thing with his children. He says, breathing in the supreme moment. We know it's a wonderful moment. Breathing out, give it to me. Yes, yes, yes. One breath in to get the body calm and serene. One breath out to say yes to life. And it's a beautiful thing when he does it with the Kids. And he does this at Camp Winter Rainbow. Camp Winter Rainbow, performing arts camp, Laytonville, California, Black Oak Ranch. And, I've been trying to send a kid there every year. One kid a year. Did it this year. Probably can't do it this year, this coming year. And that kind of breaks my heart. But it's going to be going for 50 years. And a scholarship is about $2,000. And if you're looking for a good cause, I highly recommend it. Save-it.org is also something Wavy was instrumental in helping get started with his friend Larry Brilliant, who was one of the doctors who helped eradicate smallpox. Steve Jobs got together with those guys, and Ram Dass and Jahanara Romney, Wavy's wife, who was originally named Bonnie Beecher and probably is the girl from the North Country that you hear about in Bob Dylan's Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And in any case, they got together, Minnesota somewhere, I think, or maybe it was Michigan. I forget. It's one of those M states. And Steve Jobs got them together and said, hey, let's tackle something else now that you've eradicated smallpox. And they had some UN doctors there as well, and representatives and diplomats and such. And Wavy and Ja and Ram Dass was trying to get everybody just to calm down and just be. And Jahanara wanted them to get into action. You know what I mean? And Wavy just started chanting doobie doobie doo. So I love that, right? It's clown-like, but it has deep wisdom in it. Michelle's first film, by the way, was The Wavy Gravy Story, Saint Misbehaving. I hope you will take time and check it out. Oh, gosh, what else do I want to talk about? There's so many things. Michelle did this thing of people helping people during the pandemic. She did like the Hollywood Square Zoom call with a whole bunch of different people. Like Jackson Brown was there in one cell. Bob Weir and Natasha Weir were there talking about head count. If you don't know about head count, it tries to get people registered to vote. Doesn't try to tell you how to vote, but it tries to get people to register to vote because so many people don't vote. And I'm apt to tell you in my little podcasts along the way, and I've only gone 19 minutes, I can go longer. Every cent we spend is a kind of vote for the kind of world we're co-creating. If we don't mindfully decide to use what energy we have, and money is a form of energy, and we're basically buying the kind of world we're getting. If you don't change, this is something that the chief conservator at the Carnegie Museum of Art used to say. If you do what you always did, you're going to get what you always got. And he was right. And that was Will Reel. Owe a lot to Will. He took me in as a secretary to his organization, which was quite small, just a few conservators and me. And I worked on the Andy Warhol Museum database there, taking the paper descriptions of every treatment that was done to open up the Andy Warhol Museum, which is a 7-story building, right? Big building full of Andy Warhol's work. And it has a lot of storage as well, I'm sure, that isn't actually on display. And they had to really look at the condition of everything as it was being moved there and for that to open and do assessments. And I then took those papers and began to put them into a database. And yeah, so Will allowed me to work there doing that, among other things, ordering supplies and trying to just generally keep track of things that were happening, things coming in, things going out, and doing some treatment as well. So I'd like to go back there and look at the things that I had a hand in getting conserved. And the days between 1997, I guess it was, and 2000 when I moved to Denmark. I left him in the move to Denmark. I was working for a small web software company over there, so a technical writer and just writer in general. I had a lot of fun, but when it came down to it, it transformed me into who I am today by living in Denmark and seeing the lifestyle there, and then coming over here. We could learn a lot from the Danes. Now, there's a very small country, 5 million people when I was there, probably 7 million or so by now, maybe. And they're growing by immigration in addition to just birth rates. So it's got an interesting situation, right? It's got an awful lot of immigrants, probably percentage wise, more immigrants than we do. But they're figuring it out, and I don't know where they are now because it's been many years since I've been there. I moved back here in 2002, September. But during the time I was there, I saw that their lifestyle was quite healthy and their attitudes towards things seemed to be healthier in many ways than ours. It's very different, though. We are very accepting of people, it seems to me, and they were accepting, but at the same time, there was an insularity to the Danes themselves as opposed to the people who may not have been native-born Danes. And I sort of understood that because if they were really a melting pot, there wouldn't be any Danes pretty quickly because it's like a club more than a country. It's so small. Yet it was healthy. It did have socialized medicine. It meant that you didn't go bankrupt if you got critically ill, and you had a chance to live your life in a way that would develop you, and you could sort of write your own ticket that way. You could get education free, up to whatever level of education you wanted to have. You didn't have to pay for it because the state took care of it. But you were taking, of course, the fact that the taxes were such that half of what you earned went to the state. No questions asked. But you didn't think about it. You thought of your income as what you had. And then you'd use that disposable income you had for your betterment, and you could go on vacation, travel around the world. A lot of people would take a sabbatical from their job, in 3 months or so and just go around the world and then come back and pick up their job again. And that was like just normal. It's not normal where I've been the past 20 plus years. It's been less and less common to have any vacation at all. If I had vacation time, I was using it for the sick time that I might need or time off that I might need just for mental health to keep myself from, being bonkers. I don't know. I saw a few hearts fly up. I appreciate that. I hope that all of you who are tuned in will do what you can to amplify the signal through the noise, because that's what Harrowings is about, right? We're tilling up the soil. We're getting some creative work going, and then hoping that somebody's going to pick up what we're laying down and then transmit that on and become a community, right? Just don't become people who just sort of like voyeuristically to look on. Participate. Be a part of this. I've asked when I started out, and a lot of people have joined since then, who are you? Where are you? How are you? 3 easy questions. Put it in the chat. I'll hold on. And This takes me back to having lived in Pittsburgh in Mister Rogers' literal neighborhood. He lived right down the way from me on Neville Street at the intersection of Ellsworth Avenue, and where there's a place called the Cathedral Mansions. He maintained an apartment in there. And I didn't run into him in Pittsburgh, oddly enough. I ran into him in Williamsburg, Virginia one day when I was taking care of my rounds as a conservation technician back in the '90s. And he was walking up the street towards me, and I was walking down the street. It was really early morning, nobody in the street but me and him. There was no avoiding it. I was going to pass him. I was going to have to speak. And I said, "Good morning." And he said, "Good morning." And very brightly and really engaged. But that was it. We just kept on going. And I didn't look over my shoulder to see if he was looking over his shoulder or not. But I was on my rounds, I was doing my business. I knew enough celebrities around. He probably would have stopped and talked if I'd wanted to, but I didn't want to bother him. And I do that a lot. What else am I talking about there? It was along the lines of who are you, where are you, how are you? And nobody's writing in the chat. You can write in the chat, right? Tell me who you are, where you are, how are you? How are you? That would be really interesting, right? If we'd actually do that. And I guess most people have tuned out already or are not tuned in at all because I'm not seeing anything in the chat. There we go. At home and well, thanks. Well, that's good. We then they're Asheville, North Carolina, waiting out the weather. Are you heading back to Huntsville? Is that what's happening there? Or that's why you're in Asheville, Lee? Don't you usually show up in Huntsville, Alabama? I don't know. And are you Lee, who was in my cohort in Randolph-Macon? You're heading to Virginia. You native of Virginia also? And are you Lee Kolb? I'm not hearing anything. So anyway, I'm putting people on the spot. I just assumed that this guy might be. Yeah, that's you. Okay. Well, Lee and I were in Randolph-Macon College together. And used to sit at the same table at the Estes Dining Hall, as I recall. Don't remember a lot else, Lee. I really don't. There may have been more to it. You were pretty quiet, it seemed to me. I think I might have been very quiet as well. I was mostly terrified in college. And most of the time, I felt very much out of place, and I had a lot of difficulties socially. It was just hard. I did not feel like I meshed with anybody. It was like creepy almost, how disengaged I was. And yet, I'm finding out as I get up with people who were there, they didn't feel that way about me. In fact, their memories of me are things like I turned them on to King Crimson. That's what my hat's about, King Crimson, Lark's Tongues and Aspic. And that I turned them on to Sid Barrett or whatever. Music, that was a big part of it for me, fifing. I'd come from the fife and drum corps, though, and I had been like, it was a big transition to go to college, and I just felt totally out of my element. I had problems with substances, and I just didn't do that well. I came out of it with a degree in German, more or less by accident. I started out as pre-med. I was talking to a young lady who also started out sort of in the pre-med, pre-veterinary way. That was Rachel Casey Miller. And it was a really good interview this morning, I felt. The second one was different, also very good, I think. That's my opinion. Monica Mowing came on. So we'll have more tomorrow. I've got Kay Stoner and Origin lined up. And I guess I was going to that Mr. Rogers story, too. I didn't want to divert too much from that. When I ask, who are you, how are you, where are you, I'm thinking about that time when Mr. Rogers got up in front of some people to get an award, and he then asked that everyone in the audience think about who had loved them into being. Isn't that beautiful? And then he said, I want you just to stop and think for a minute. I'll keep the time. And he then turned to his watch to keep the time. By the way, really nice watch I've got here. was talking about Michelle Ezrick, who I'll have on later. The first time I met her, she was on a panel for a screening of her film, Saint Misbehaving, the Wavy Gravy story, Saint Misbehaving. And there was a raffle at the Mainline Arts Center where they were having an exhibit of Grateful Dead posters that belonged to this guy, Scott Shapiro. So how this came about is a pretty good story, and I'll go ahead and tell it. I've gotten a half hour in, so I'll go ahead and tell the story. Scott Shapiro wanted to exhibit his Grateful Dead collection. He didn't want to sell it, though, so he's looking for a place to hang it where they wouldn't want to sell them. And so what he did was he ended up at the Mainline Arts Center and pitched his vision for having an exhibit of his Grateful Dead posters there. And when he pitched it, he was pitching it to their directors and staff and such. And one woman turned to the others after he did his pitch and has been kind of looking at him kind of skeptically and said to the others, "Does he know?" And he was like, "No, what?" This was Wavy Gravy's daughter-in-law was on the staff. And they put two and two together and said, well, Wavy can come out and visit the grandchildren. And with his wife, he came out. And they could have a screening of the film. And they could tie it all together and make it a weekend. And it would be basically the 80th birthday celebration for Wavy on the East Coast. They do one on the West Coast with the hog farm. And that's the commune that Wavy lives in. And this is one of the longest running in the country, if not the longest running. And then over in Philadelphia, they'd also have a little music thing going on over by the Mainline Arts Center. Splintered Sunlight, I think, played. That's a Dead cover band that's big in Philly. And then the next night, something would go on at the Ardmore Music Hall for that. So I drove up the day of this screening and the Ardmore Music Hall thing. And I met Michelle there. So that's how I met Michelle Ezrick. And why was I telling the story entirely? Probably lost at this point. But the point being that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I got there, and when I was getting my stuff signed, I got like 10 copies of the film on DVD to distribute to friends down here in D.C., spread the gravy, as it were. It's such a great story, It's review, one of the blurbs on the back of it says, it's like an unabashed love letter to the world. And I'm telling you, you will really feel good after just being in the presence of this man. He's infused politics with humor is one thing that Ram Dass said. Did Ram Dass say that? Or somebody else say that? It's infused politics with humor. Maybe it was Ram Dass. And in doing so, he made a mockery of it in some ways by saying nobody for president, because nobody should have that much power. Nobody makes better apple pie than mom. Nobody's in Washington working for you. Nobody cares for the poor. So nobody became this like chattery teeth thing he would keep on him, and that stood in for nobody. There's so many good stories that somebody can have over the course of 80 years of trying to do the most with what you have, right? Putting your good where it'll do the most. And that's on my theme as well. So I don't know. I could go on and on. I probably will go on and on. And as long as I've got breath in the body, I'm going to try to get the signal out there. And then I need the support from all of you. And some of you are supporting me. Harriet's supporting me as a paid subscriber, for which I'm incredibly grateful. It just means so much. And if anybody else wants to be one, it's easy. You are then a member of my board of directors of the Harold B. Gill Foundation, LLC. It is a real company. Nobody of the board of directors has yet seen fit to try to direct me that I've noticed. But then again, I can be oblivious. I have one guy who's actually a founding member, Eric Knudsen. So I consider him to be the chairman of my board. I can have co-chairs, though. So don't let that stop you from being a founding member unless you don't want to be associated with Eric. But you don't have to associate with Eric. I mean, He's a great guy, I'm sure. I've had him on once as a guest. That can be a little bluer conversation at times. I've had other guys on too, as well as women. And I think that having a good mix, diversity is really important. I've tried to get the Bigger Lie on. He's local to DC as well. He does some pretty good newsletters. But for one reason or another, I think he's got some health issues. He can't actually speak well, apparently, but he's doing good work. The Bigger Lie. I try to amplify his signal through the noise. I want to hear those diverse voices. And Rachel's in London. I probably will have Charlotte Del Signore on at some point. She just did her first live interview with somebody recently. It was really interesting. I want to get her guest on too, if I can remember. I have to go back and look at Charlotte's feed, but I'll be able to find it pretty easily by just looking at Charlotte's feed, right? Charlotte Del Signore is my coach. I decided to hire her as a coach because she has a thing called Career Punks. And if you don't know about Career Punks, check out Charlotte. She's based in London too, like Rachel. And Monica's out in Indianapolis, former commodities trader. That's what she was doing when I met her in the floor of the Hampton Coliseum in front of the stage because she was lined up like I was with where John Mayer would be playing. I was sort of lined up between Bobby and John, but I think she was really after John. That's what got her into Dead and Company. And, it's like an infection or something. Did you hear that the Grateful Dead just got into the Guinness Book of World Records, probably again, for 66 top 40 Billboard albums in the course of their career? That just the latest Dave's Picks, which is probably back here on the shelf somewhere. Yeah, there it is over there. Over there. That got on Billboard top 40 again. It's amazing. It's amazing what they managed to do. We were talking, Monica and I, about how the Grateful Dead created the internet. And, if you don't know about John Perry Barlow's work, this guy had a lot to do with it. He was a lyricist who worked with Bob Weir. Mother American Night is the line out of Black Throated Wind. And this book, this memoir, completed just days before he died. It is an American life like no other. Let's see what it says on the back. Let's read a few blurbs, shall we? It says, Barlow is a former cowpoke, Republican politician, and lyricist for the Grateful Dead, whose affinity for wide open spaces and free expression transformed him into a leading defender of an unfettered internet. He championed not only the right to speak freely on the web, but also what he called a right to know all the information that it offers. New York Times said that. Edward Snowden said, John Perry Barlow was the dawn of the digital rights for so many, including me. Mother American Night leaves no doubt why he is remembered as the first poet laureate of cyberspace. Optimistic, beautiful, and often hilarious, this memoir not only recounts some of the most important battles in the first 2 decades of the internet, but also Barlow's indelible footprint on American art, politics, and culture over the last 50 years. John had a way of taking life's most difficult things and framing them as challenges, therefore adventures by their nature, awakening, and maybe even fun. He was to be admired for that, even emulated. That's from Bob Weir via Facebook, it says here. Sean Ono Lennon says, it is a privilege to read the story of John Perry Barlow's life in his own words. The topology of his tropology was utterly unique. The man was part Socrates, part John Wayne, part Loki, part Lord Byron, part Tesla, part Kennedy, part Reagan, part internet guru, and bona fide acid head. That his diminutive frame managed to contain the vast infinity of his being is its own kind of miracle. Sean Ono Lennon. And finally, from Daniel Ellsberg, Pentagon Papers guy, right? Mother American Night is one of those books where you sit down to read the opening chapter, but then can't put it down until you finished it cover to cover. The colorful and almost unbelievable stories that John Perry tells, woven together with his trademark prose, make you feel like you were there with him at the center of so many cultural touchstones since the 1960s. However, it's the tales of fighting against injustice and fighting for free speech and privacy that I cherish the most. Reading Mother American Night reminds me of everything that made him such an American original in the first place. So, man behind the scenes in the dead, but at the same time on the front lines, he founded the EFF.org with Mitch Kapoor, among others, I think. But those stand out in my memory. And what else did I want to tell you about this matter? I think there was something else really critical I was thinking of as I was reading Sean Ono Lennon's quotation, going into Daniel Ellsberg's, and now it's sort of drifted away from me. We're only 1 degree from each other, pretty much. All of us, if we're close and listening to each other now. And the 6 degrees of separation thing to the rest of the world is important to realize. The interconnectivity, the way in which we impact each other's lives, so significant. And it's mostly unconscious. If we can be more conscious, which is a big part of what I'm trying to do here, is raise awareness, to be an awakener of these things. Can I slip? No, probably not. It's in here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Way down here. Be an awakener, de-awakener. In this case, Mayor Baba, the Awakener, is by Charles Haynes, who was the director of religious studies where Lee and I went to college when we were there. He was or director of religious life, I think is what they called him, and he was a devotee of Mayor Baba. There's actually a picture of him hugging Mayor Baba in the flesh as a kid. Mayor Baba dropped the body in 1969, if I remember correctly. I think it was in January. He was silent, though, from 1924 until then. And being silent, he used a gestural language to communicate after dropping his alphabet board, which he would spell out very rapidly what he wanted to convey. And it was by choice that he decided not to speak. And it's a spiritual practice and quite astonishing, really. I mean, Charles's book was part of a doctoral dissertation. And, a lot of people don't know about him. And it's not hard to know about him, not with the internet the way it is. Oh, and you know what? Huh, this is really funny. Inside of the cover of this is a ticket to the Unlimited Devotion of which year? Oh, this was this year where I had Unlimited Delights VIP add-on food and beverage. Dang. I'm not sure which day it was. Oh, booth, because I had a whole booth. It was not cheap ticket. I was surprised it's in there. I'm shocked. I don't know how it got in there. But it does. That was a Wavy Gravy associated thing, a fundraiser for the Rex Foundation. I was wearing a Rex Foundation hat earlier today, but now I've got the Lark's Tongue and Aspic hat. And the Rex Foundation raises money for good causes. It's a Grateful Dead charitable arm, and they've given away over $10 million now since 1984. They give small grants, just nudging the needle a little bit, for different organizations, being the change they want to see in the world. And also Camp Winter Rainbow that I was mentioning earlier, which is the performing arts camp run by Wavy Gravy and Jaw for 50 years. They've sort of emeritus directors now, but younger people are carrying it on. I got a letter from one of them today noting my $2,000 contribution so that a kid could go to camp who might otherwise be able to. I don't have kids myself, so why not send a kid to camp? Transform their lives. They never have to know who I am, but I've done something to try to help somebody else do something that can be really transformative and maybe help shape the world in a more positive direction than it's going otherwise. Wavy's got a book, 2 out that I really like a lot. It's called Something Good for a Change. And this one, autographed by Wavy, I think. Yep. is one of two that I bought, and one of them I gave to my late father so he could read it. This one has Wavy's inimitable the, toward the fun kind of labyrinth he likes to draw. And he has a labyrinth out there at Laytonville and the Black Oak Ranch, has kids walk it. Sort of ends the movie if you go watch it again with the Wavy Gravy movie, Saint Misbehavin'. Find it on YouTube. It's not expensive. I highly recommend it. It'll really lift your spirits and make you feel like you want to be something more than what you already are. Yeah, let me read a little bit of it. Why not? I still got some of you with me. Maybe you did not know that. What did you not know? You have to tell me what you didn't know. Something good for a change. You have some gravy on your eyes. This is Wavy Gravy, author, kids camp director, humanitarian activist, pacifist, clown, and temple of accumulated error. I love that about him. He calls himself a temple of accumulated error. I currently reside within these very words you're looking at right now, just gaze directly at the page. Start to open your eyes really wide, wider still. Just explode your eyeballs onto the page. See all the words at once. Let yourself begin to float in light. Now, quick, touch my cape. Go whoosh and squeeze your eyes shut. See those bright spots on your eyelids? Now go for the light inside the center of your head. Head for the blinding flashes. Those are my major true life experiences reduced to a series of random slides awaiting reactualization in the carousel of my mind. So let's give the whole thing a flip or a spin. The beginning of the book has absolutely nothing to do with the chronology of my life, but is merely my own personal running order of the moment if I were Mr. Random. But don't let me intimidate you. Feel free to flip or spin. Now go whoosh and begin. Could we have the next slide, please? And this is along the lines of what Patti Smith tends to do, which is she will sometimes break out Uncle Wiggily and read it to us. If you don't know Uncle Wiggily, he was a rabbit, and he's a children's book, basically, and she likes to read it. 78 years old. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. So what didn't you know, Lee? Are you out there? Can you tell me what you didn't know? I don't know what you didn't know. Exhausting, isn't it? I see the hearts. And it's exhausting just trying to follow what the hell I'm going to be talking about next. One of the people I met and that I had a Harrowings podcast with early on. Whoa, we got a little bit of an avalanche over here. Avalanche. Oops. Yep. I'll do that. Stay together. Stay together, pile of books. Ooh. Slippy. Is that? I don't know. One of the things that I had as early guest, one of the people I had was Lisa Law. This is her flashing on the 60s. And this is Wavy's wife, Shaw, during the Woodstock thing. She is part of the free kitchen. Then she was serving people with the 200,000 paper plates and Dixie cups that Lisa Law got. She called me Harold on the signature page here. That's fine. I didn't mind that. And that was 2020. She sent me that. That's over 5 years ago. But Lisa and I are still pretty good friends. And she's still out there doing the thing. She's a photographer, though. And she liked to take pictures. So she took them and she kept her negatives. So you see the kinds of pictures she was taking. Got a good one of the Beach Boys there. I think. No, the Kingston Trio. I'm sorry. That's the Kingston Trio. She got a lot of other people. I flip through here a little bit and see if there's some that you'll recognize. Cher and Sonny Bono. Yeah. So you see the time period she was in, 60s, flashing on the 60s. And that is in 1965 at the Cow Palace. And the Beatles, yeah, she got the Beatles. Such a really good one of the Beatles there. That's probably famous, world famous picture. So Lisa is just a force of nature, right? She's still living that ethos. David Crosby, 1965. Got a good one with Cros. I sure miss him. I loved his tweets. He would be on Twitter and he'd talk about how his kids would talk about if he spilled something on himself, he had Crosby'd himself. So my wife and I still say, oh, you Crosby'd yourself. There's one of her better ones. You know that guy, Bob Dylan. If you go to the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you'll see a lot of her photographs. And by the way, this is a fantastic one. He was in the castle staying with them in California with Tom Law and Lisa Law. And that's Bob Dylan's typewriter. Yeah. So, you know, this one. This one's been reproduced all over the place. And if you go to the Bob Dylan Center, you'll see it. Anyway, I just loved having her on. It's so much fun talking to Lisa. And we go everywhere. And she called me. That was a weird thing. She called me right after I got this book, after I watched Jay Blakesberg, who I had as guest just a couple weeks ago. And Jay, what a guy. This is one of his books here. Fare thee well. I got this off of Jay's hands at the Birchmere. Anyway, he'd had Lisa as a guest on his show, Photos with Stories, and there he's written a couple of Barlow lyrics for me there, Hal. The highway, the moon, the clouds, and the stars. And then he signed it down below. Let there be songs to fill the air. Indeed, this from the Fare Thee Well concerts at Soldier Field, where he did this, arranged them to do this photograph turned toward him away from the crowd, and the core four playing. Just an amazing piece of history, right? He calls himself a visual anthropologist. And his Photos with Stories show during the pandemic, though, I watched that and I saw Lisa being interviewed. It was September 13th, 2020, to be precise. I saw it live. It's still out there on YouTube. Photos with Stories, Lisa Law. And it lasted almost 2 hours, that show. And I ordered the books and the DVD, flashing on the 60s, to see it. And maybe I'll go watch it now. So good. I've got extra copies, actually, if anybody wants one. They're right up here over my shoulder. And right over my ear here is Phil Lesh with his Steal Your Face kind of logo with Buckle Up Kids over the top of it. Buckle up, kids. I love that. If you don't know who Phil Lesh is, do yourself a favor and learn about him. He's dead now since October 2024. I feel kinship with his son, Graham, who leads Midnight North, another band, and who I saw at the first Unlimited Devotion. And I'm going to get back to the story I was telling you earlier. But he lost his father the same year I lost mine. My father died in April. Phil died in October. And there's something about losing your father, especially when you have a really close relationship, when you feel a kinship. And that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow, about kinship and artificial intelligence ethics. It's an interesting topic. I want to dig into it. Getting back to Lisa, getting back to Jay. So I get these things. I get this DVD. I've got extra copies, as I mentioned. I get all this stuff, and then I get an email that day. It says, hey, your stuff is on the way. I said, not only is it on the way, it's here already. And I put my phone number in, and my phone rings about noon. I don't take it. I realize who it is by the call ID. It's Lisa. She's calling me. About 5 o'clock, she called me back, and I took the call. We ended up talking for about an hour like old friends. I helped her realize. I gave her a little chunk of change like I tend to do, because I want to be the change I want to see in the world, right? If she want to get some museum of the 60s going, well, hell, let's do it. So I gave her a chunk of change, not a lot, but enough to nudge the needle a little. And sure enough, she did it. She put up a museum of the 60s as a pop-up museum on San Francisco Street. I think it was 76 San Francisco Street in Santa Fe, New Mexico. My friend Jack, who's sort of bi-coastal, spent time in Santa Fe a lot. He went out and saw it, and Lisa showed him around the whole exhibit herself. So he got a personal tour from Lisa. I've never met her face to face. Right. I've been on video calls with her, but, it was just really a great thing. So it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Indeed. And we have Krishna Domini joining. Welcome. I'm going to wrap up soon because it's getting late and I've been on 55 minutes and 12 seconds. But this is going to be pushed out on YouTube. It's going to be pushed out on Spotify. It's going to be pushed out on Apple Podcasts and I don't know what all. So it's findable, but it can be amplified. So all of my viewers are encouraged to amplify my signal through the noise. What do I mean by that? I mean, click share. Don't just click share, push it out to your network. Tell people why you want them to see it. If you don't like it, if you don't think it's worthy of that, that's fine. In fact, give me feedback. Tell me why you don't think it's worthy of being amplified through the noise. I know I'm scattered, right? I'll talk about one thing after the other. I could be more structured, but I just love doing it. I love talking to people. I want people to hear what's happening. Yeah. Said it faster than I typed it. Yeah, maybe I did. That's the thing. And Harriet's got the right idea. Now, one of the things is we miss 100% of the shots we don't take. So take the shot, hit the button. I quite often will leave my text, leave the ask at the bottom, right? I don't ask at the top. The ask is usually click a button, any button. If you can't click subscribe and be a free subscriber, okay. If you can't hit and be a paid subscriber, okay. But you could hit share Harrowings or you could hit share that post. A lot of times I don't use that button, but maybe I will. I have recently. I also have like buy me a coffee option where you could like put in whatever you can afford and support me or support writers you like. If you don't like me, support somebody else. Be a paid subscriber of Substack because some of that goes to supporting the platform itself, which keeps it ad free, I think. Hopefully, it'll always be ad free no matter what we do. But right now, it's ad free. It's not like so many other platforms that are trying to sell you stuff with every other click. Here, you basically get to support each other. And that's our new economy, right? Where we support each other, we help each other survive. And believe it or not, I cannot survive on $1,300 a year. I could survive if all of my subscribers were paid subscribers. I can't expect that of everybody, and I don't. But I do think that those of us who are able to, what, $8 a month, $80 a month, $80 a year, that saves you, right? So that would be $96 a year at $8 a month. But if you do go for a full year, it's $80. And I'll see about 60 something of that. And then the rest of it goes over to Substack and helps keep this platform rolling and keep it growing and getting it new functionality like this ability. This ability to do a live on my laptop. The first time I could do that. Just got released today, as far as I know, that functionality. So there you go. And I'm wrapping up towards an hour with you guys. Really enjoyed it. Michael Gordon Penn has joined. I hope you'll stream what I've been laying down here after I go click the end button up there. But we'll do more of this. We'll do more live from the bunker. And that's what this one is live from the bunker, which is my little abode here in Washington, D.C. I live just down the road from Jeff Bezos, but he hasn't had me over yet. He's got a double mansion up on S Street just over the hill from where I live. I very rarely see these people. I've really brought the demographic down. Like I say, I'm literally living right now on, savings. I'm burning through those, but subsidizing my freedom from wage slavery, which I have been enjoying since August 2nd, 2024. Not averse to having a job, but I do think that the idea of being able to be a freelancer like I'm doing now through this medium is not a bad one. So I've been giving it a shot. I'd love to be able to earn my money if I'm doing this kind of work, but, people have to value it. I think we're all worthy of that. And that's something I'm going to be talking to Michelle about, asking for help. We're going to be talking about how she did what she did. And let me tell you a little bit about that before I go. Oh, there's the 1 hour mark. What the hell? I'm going to break through it. Michelle asked for help from people when she was starting out to make the film called The Wavy Gravy Movie, Saint Misbehavin'. It was very successful in 2009. It came out again to Kino Lorber in a 10th anniversary edition in 2019. I highly recommend that one because it has a nice little interview with Wavy and Ja, his wife, after that. Um, 10 years had elapsed and catching up with them in her apartment in New York. So she asked people for help. And you know who came to her aid? Somebody that she was talking to knew D.A. Pennebaker, the director who made, among other things, Don't Look Back, the film about Bob Dylan's tour of England that you may have seen. I don't know. Um, you can get it on Criterion. It's a pretty good film. D.A. Pennebaker also, I think, was the guy behind Monterey Pop. That may be more famous than Bob Dylan's film, Don't Look Back. But D.A. Pennebaker is this great documentary filmmaker. So young Michelle gets plugged into D.A. Pennebaker, and he agrees to be her executive producer and answer questions as she has them and tell her how to do it. And she does it. And it's beautifully filmed. It really is quite a nice film. And then, by asking for help, she also got funding for this. I think she had to raise like $1 million to fund her documentary. And then she got me to fund the Cracked Up just by the basis that I asked her, what's next and how can I help? Because I wanted to be a part of what she was doing. I wanted to feel like I had some agency in the world in bringing to light her next work, which was Cracked Up. Somebody listened to Daryl and Michelle being interviewed. Daryl Hammond of Saturday Night Live was the main subject of this film, Cracked Up. And they had thrown the rope over the rafter already to hang themselves as they were listening to a radio interview with Michelle and Daryl, and then realized that their problem was trauma. And they decided to get help. And they're alive today because they heard that and that serendipitously at the right moment and did not end up killing themselves. How about that? I thank you. I thank you for saying as well. We're supporting the library on legs, a live knowledge basis. I said, well, yeah, that's the thing, right? I've got all this accretion in here and I keep trying to get it out. It doesn't really come out in an organized fashion entirely. It's seeping through. My God, I've got so many irons in the fire. I've got this contract. It's a letter of agreement or understanding with Charles Carter of Shirley Plantation, the longest running business in America, family owned business. Shirley was established in 1613, and the building itself dates from the 1720s, I think. The main plantation building. And my father helped transcribe the Shirley papers, a lot of 19th century material. He also published the Arctic journals of one of the Carter family, who was a young lieutenant who traveled on searching for the Franklin expedition. In fact, that's what the edited journal is called, Searching for the Franklin Expedition, the Arctic Journals of Robert Randolph Carter. Won an award as one of the best primary documents of naval history at some naval institute, I think, in Annapolis back in, some years ago. And so I've got to preserve and protect that legacy. And those Shirley papers, Charles Carter, the owner of Shirley Plantation now, multi-generation now, 13th generation or something like that. Maybe it's 11th generation. Anyway, he's going to allow me to go ahead and publish those behind firewall so people can get at them, be internet accessible is the idea. And I think they should be. I hope to do some writing around that as well. So lots of little things to do, right? My father's articles, oh gosh, I don't seem to see a CW journal handy, but man, I got a ton of them. I got a ton of those articles to transcribe still. I've done a lot of them. I've done a lot of them back behind the firewall as well. One of the best ones he did is called, A Legacy of Locke, One Good Town. And then people didn't realize until he did this research that John Locke was very directly responsible for the establishment of Williamsburg as the capital of Virginia. If it wasn't for his influence, it may not have happened. And in a lot of ways, what he was trying to do was take his two treatises on government and see them instantiated as an example and an experiment in America. So 1699, you get the establishment after the 1697 recommendations from Locke. You get the establishment of Williamsburg as the capital of Virginia, moving it from Jamestown to Williamsburg. And then it went from Williamsburg to Richmond in 1780 during the Revolution, and it fell asleep. And then it was restored by John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s money at the vision of W.A.R. Goodwin, the rector of Bruton Parish Church, which still exists today, the longest-running Episcopal church in America, continuously operating, built in 1715, replacing the original church on that site, with a bell tower added later. And, it's nice to be able to go back to Williamsburg and feel a part of that. So I will do that on the 7th. I'll be leading the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum alumni. I won't be leading them, but I'll be fifing with them. And we'll be leading the Williamsburg Community Christmas Parade, which is not part of Colonial Williamsburg, it's part of the Williamsburg community. So you'll see a lot of floats of all kinds of different people. If you come down to Williamsburg, Virginia on Sunday, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, a day which shall live in infamy in many ways. But it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a great time. And I like doing it. It's just fun to go out there and blow on a fife because it penetrates everything. It's a shrill instrument. This is the 50th anniversary of the Fife and Drum Corps' fife. You can see it's got a lot of wear on it. Blackwood, African blackwood, I believe. And pewter ferrules, beautifully engraved. It's hard to see the engraving, but it's there. Yeah. You can see a little bit of the engraving on it. And these are it was one of the high points in my career to be there in 2008 when we celebrated 50 years. It was July 4th, 1958, when the Fife and Drum first fielded 2 fifers and 2 snare drummers. And it grew, and by the time I joined in 1974, I was issue number 124. We had started an issue number thing in 1972 under John Moon for our equipment. And so I was 124, but there were a lot of guys in the generation before me that did not get numbers. So I was an early part of the Corps. We've got thousands now, in the low 1,000 for the issue numbers that are going out now. And it's nice to see the generations come together. Another thing about the Harrowings podcast, generations, right? I've had everybody from Skip Healy, who's the world's greatest fifer, based in Switzerland now, making flutes as well as fifes, wooden flutes, keyed instruments, whereas a fife has only 6 finger holes, at least mine do. Skip also makes the fifes for the old guard Fife and Drum Corps, which have 10 holes. They're concert pitch and fancier, 2-part. And let's see. So we've had everybody from him. Lisa Law probably is my most senior member who's been here. Again, really important figure historically speaking, I believe. What else do I want to say about that? We've had, of course, Jay, who's about my age. Jay's 64. He just turned 64 on December 1st, and we still love him, even though he's 64. That's Jay Blakesberg, photographer for the Grateful Dead scene. He's done this one, and Monica said that she really wants to get this one for her Christmas. I sure hope she does. This is my copy. Rainbow Full of Sound, Dead and Company. And Jay blew me away. I didn't even expect this, but he stuck this in here for me. Similar picture to the one that's on the cover of fairly well. And what's really nice is Mickey Hart wrote the foreword for this, and Jay and Mickey both signed it. It's number 19 of 185 of the um, you know, special edition ones. So kind of precious to me, even though, well, yeah, this is 6/10/17 is when he did this one of the band. And John Mayer is a big draw from my friend Monica. She wanted to slide over when I did that. Anyway, I could go on and often do. And I have. And Warren Ross has joined. So I was waiting for Warren to join so I could say goodnight to all of you and hope that all of you will be the change you want to see in the world. Consider how you are conducting yourselves. Every cent spent is a vote for the kind of world we're co-creating. If you look out there in the world and you say it's going to hell in a handbasket, guess what? Each one of us has a part in that if we're over the age of consent. Good night, Lee, and talk to y'all later.